Watch history come alive as the epic Battle of Katanning is recreated. Education Today starts now.
Welcome to Education Today. I'm John Zish with the Armstrong School District. Something extraordinary happened in Armstrong County this September. The Armstrong County Tourist Bureau organized the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Katanning. There were breathtaking battle reenactments, which we're seeing a quick clip of right now. Wow! There was a major exhibit at Katanning High School, as you can see. And there was a special play penned just for the occasion by a West Shamokin High School teacher. And there's a quick look at that. All in all, it was legendary, but it was also educational, and that's where our show is headed today. To talk about the educational angle of the Battle of Katanning's 250th anniversary, we were joined by two Armstrong School District teachers, Kathy Blows and Carrie Miles. Delighted to have you on the program.
Thank you for
Glad
having
to be
us.
here. Thank you.
Would you please tell us briefly about yourselves?
Go ahead, Kathy.
All right. I've been a teacher in the Armstrong School District for over 30 years. I've taught at East Brady High School when it was still in existence. I taught at Ford City, and most of my career has been here at Katanning Junior High School. I've been an Armstrong County resident all my life and was always aware of the Battle of Katanning. However, I wasn't aware of the magnitude of it and its historical significance.
That's great. How about you?
And I'm Carrie Miles. I graduated from Clarion University with a Bachelor in Education. I'm certified in Social Studies as well as mid-level math. And this is my first year here at Katanning Junior High.
Welcome. Well, what was your involvement in the Battle of Katanning anniversary? Either going to some of the activities or the play, or what did you guys do?
Well, as the 8th grade students, they all went to the high school where the museum was set up in the gym. It was a beautiful display. The man who has the display is an ancestor of William Thompson, who actually participated in the battle. And I really felt that the displays there would rival anything that you would see at a major museum. My students went to the museum, saw the display, and we came back and talked about it, and they wrote reports on what they had seen.
Excellent. What was your involvement?
My class, very, very similar to what Kathy said. We took all the 8th graders down to the high school. In class, before we went, I did give a brief introduction into the French and Indian War because we aren't quite in that place yet throughout history in our classes. So I gave them a little background on that. We talked a little bit about the Battle of Katanning, and I thought it was really neat that the kids could not only hear from me about the Battle of Katanning, but to see it as well when we went to the museum. So it worked out very well.
That's true. And what was the student response to this? How did they react?
They really liked it. They enjoyed it. There were very, very many different artifacts from the time period. One of the things that I was impressed by, after the battle, a few years after that, they made medals to give to the people who were involved in the Battle of Katanning, and very few of those medals still exist. There was one on display at the high school with this man's museum, and they really were impressed. The magnitude of items that they had there, it was just very impressive.
Very good. How about your students, Carrie?
In my class, it did spawn a lot of questions, further about the village and about the Battle of Katanning. So there was a lot of interest. We had a lot of students that did go to the reenactments that were throughout town. I know Kathy had a student, and I also had a student that actually participated in the play that went on. So there was a lot of interest within the classroom.
That's right. Well, we probably should tell our viewers what the significance historically of the Battle of Katanning was, and who would like to field that one? Just how did it fit into the national history?
Well, the people were moving from the East Coast, moving westward, and as they moved westward, they encountered the Native Americans that were already living there. the Native Americans, there were incursions. They would attack people, and so they had to be protected. The British had to pay for this. They wanted the colonists to pay, and this was sort of a precursor to the Revolutionary War. The taxes that were placed on them, they felt it was a burden on them. So this really was a precursor to the Revolutionary War.
Thank you for that overview, Kathy. Okay, well, here it comes. We're now going to take you onto the battlefield to see the exciting reenactments of the Battle of Katanning. You're seeing video brought to you by Katanning Senior High School student Nathan Bagoli and Dawn Swanson of the Armstrong School District. The voice you'll hear is that of Mike Sleece, who portrays Colonel John Armstrong. Let's take a look.
Early in the morning on September the 8th of 1756, Lieutenant Colonel John Armstrong and 306 men of the 2nd Battalion of the Pennsylvania Regiment of Foot snuck into the lower end of the Indian village of Katanning. There was a massive cornfield at that lower end of the town along the river. They waited until dawn when the village and all the Indians in the cornfield were asleep. Armstrong spread his men out through the cornfield and up toward the hill, sending Captain Hugh Mercer and his company up to the top side, giving them enough time to get around to surround the Indians on 3 sides. At daylight, the battle began. It took the Indians a few minutes to realize what was happening, and once they did, they armed themselves and gave fire back. Things were mass confusion. The English prisoners who had been taken, there were over 100 here in the town, were herded away because the Indians knew that Armstrong had come to get them. So they herded them away with the women and children of the village to keep them from falling into Armstrong's hands. Some did, however. Armstrong was able to bring back only about 11. Some of those that he relieved from the village got recaptured and were brutally tortured and put to death. This was done as a lesson to the others to don't try it again. Some tried their best to get away, to get to the soldiers. A steady fire was kept up on both sides. The green-coated Pennsylvanians gave volley fire as well as individual fire. This was done to keep the Indians off their guard. They knew the soldiers fired in volleys, and they would await the commands of make ready, present, and fire. And they knew when they heard the word present that fire followed. When they heard present, they would flatten themselves on the ground, hoping that the soldiers' shots would sail overhead. Therefore, Armstrong ordered his soldiers to fire by volley and then as individuals. Canoes were smashed so they could not be used. Prisoners continued to escape. Sometimes they were hit. Sometimes they escaped. Captain Jacobs, who was the principal chief here in Katanning, had bragged that the French had given him enough gunpowder to carry the war 10 years, and they stored it in their homes. Both sides kept up a running fire. No one knows for sure, but it's estimated that there were at least 40 Indian fatalities. Armstrong took a tremendous number of fatalities amongst his own ranks. He himself was wounded in the shoulder. Hugh Mercer was wounded. Captain Jacobs was eventually killed as he was firing out of the cockloft of his house, or the garret. He was shot and fell. His wife and family stayed inside the house.
That was amazing. Well, we're going to take a short break. My guests were Kathy Blows and Carrie Miles of Katanning Junior High School, and I'd like to thank them both for being on the show. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thanks very much. When we come back, we'll have a little more battle footage, and then we'll have a visit with the man who wrote the play for the Battle of Katanning, Mr. Ren Steele. We'll be right back with Armstrong School District's Education Today.
Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where technology, science, and the arts come together. The Princeton Review has included IUP in its top 25 most connected universities in the nation. Quality, affordability, excellence. Indiana University of Pennsylvania. The perfect fit.
Welcome back to Armstrong School District's Education Today. I'm John Zisch with the Armstrong School District. Today we're talking about the Battle of Katanning and its 250th anniversary in September. Before we bring on our next guest, let's see some more of that footage from the reenactment of the Battle of Katanning.
Armstrong gave orders that the village be set afire. Many soldiers were dead or wounded. As the village burned, Jacob's house caught fire, and the gunpowder stored inside blew up. The resulting explosion killed his wife and family, and soldiers reported seeing body parts flying 200 yards into the corn. The explosion was so severe that it was heard at Fort Duquesne, 45 miles down the river from Katanning. Captain Jacobs' corpse was identified by a powder horn and a hunting bag that he had, It was given to him in trade by a French officer for a pair of boots that he had taken from the body of Lieutenant Edward Armstrong, the colonel's brother, who was killed at Fort Granville about a week before the expedition left from Fort Shirley. Lieutenant Edward Armstrong. Some historians think that the battle was insignificant. Militarily, it could be judged as, I wouldn't say a failure, but it did not achieve the objectives that they wanted. However, it did achieve the objective of boosting the morale of the Pennsylvania citizenry. It was the very first victory of any kind on the British side during the French and Indian War. You might compare it to the 20th century Doolittle's raid during World War II. Militarily, tactically, it wasn't much, but as a morale booster, it was a winner. Armstrong received word that Shingus's men were crossing the river and were attempting to get in behind him. And he decided at that point that it was time to go. So he said to his men, "I think we've done enough damage here for today, let's go." And they got out of there. At the first firing, Shingus had taken his people to the west. He evacuated his village, took his women and children and his prisoners to the west, and returned later to help here, but got here just a little too late, and Armstrong and his people got away.
Amazing. Well, on to our next segment. The play titled The Battle of Katanning. To talk more about the play penned just for the anniversary, we have playwright Ren Steele with us, also a teacher at West Shamokin Junior Senior High School. Welcome, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, John. How was the pizza?
Oh, it was wonderful, yes. Hey, thanks very much for doing this play, and I was wondering if you could please tell us what went into the making of it and why you took it on, even though you have so much going on as a teacher and a playwright.
Well, I was contacted by the Tourist Bureau and Mr. Larry Shedwick. He called me on the telephone, and I run a summer theater, Freeport Theater Festival, down near Freeport. We've done a lot of historical dramas detailing the history of Western Pennsylvania in the French and Indian War, the Revolution, and the story of Massey Harbison, a local hero from Freeport who was captured by the Indians. He asked me to write the play, The Battle of Katanning. He also invited me to a meeting at the Tourist Bureau in Katanning, and they told me the extent of the festivities they had planned for the 250th anniversary of this major battle.
Well, would you please give me an overview of the play?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I wrote the play from two perspectives. My father's family is Scotch-Irish and from an old revolutionary family from this area. They spent 3 years, or my grandfather, three back, spent 3 years with George Washington in the Continental Army in the Pennsylvania Rifle Regiment. But my mother's family are Cherokee from Oklahoma, and she came up here on a scholarship to Chatham College that she won as a national scholar, and they married during World War II. But the play, The Battle of Katanning, is about Colonel Armstrong's mission to quell the Indian tribes on the frontier. This was after the defeat of General Braddock on the Monongahela by the French and the Indians. The frontier was wide open to attack. The French encouraged the Delaware and the Shawnee especially to raid into the eastern valleys, the Cumberland Valley, the Susquehanna Valley. Especially hit hard were the German settlers and the Scotch-Irish settlers. They formed a militia at the behest of Benjamin Franklin, and it was initially resisted by the Quakers, who were pacifists, quote unquote, and they basically were against this battalion, but it was formed eventually, and they did plan a raid very similar to the Doolittle raid in World War II against the Indian forces in the Allegheny Valley. The major Indian village in this area was Katanning, and most of the war parties that went out east, or toward the east, were from the village of Katanning. The gunpowder was supplied by the French at the point at Fort Duquesne, and they ran canoes up the Allegheny full of gunpowder. In fact, Captain Jacobs, one of the main war chiefs who was killed in the battle, his wigwam, or cabin, was full of gunpowder. And when it was lit on fire and exploded, the explosion was so loud you could hear it 50 miles away at the point in Fort Duquesne. So it was a huge amount of gunpowder that was destroyed by Armstrong's raiders. They came over the mountains 150 miles into enemy territory, so to speak, and they were able to sideslip a war party that was going east toward Shirleysburg, or Fort Shirley, and they slipped by them and got below the town on the south side of the town. They left a detachment under Lieutenant Hogg at Blanket Hill to observe those Indians while they got in position. At dawn, I think it was on the 8th of September, 1856, they attacked north along the shore of the Allegheny River through the cornfields below the town, and there was a very contested fight that lasted 6 hours. There were a lot of casualties on both sides. Armstrong himself was shot in the shoulder. Also, Lieutenant Mercer was shot as well. Many of the prominent leaders of the American Revolution were involved in this battle. And they, after 6 hours, they managed to kill Captain Jacobs, one of the main war chiefs, blew up the powder magazine, and destroy the corn crops and cause some damage to the village. They burned most of the houses.
Wow.
So they started getting fire from the other side of the Allegheny, and where West Kittanning is today. And on that side lived Chief Shingus. That was the part that I played. He was one of the other war chiefs of the Delaware Indians. And I want to say Delaware are really called Lenni Lenape, but we call them Delaware, but their real name is Lenni Lenape.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that overview, Mr.
Okay.
Steele. I appreciate that.
Am I
That's
done?
our show for today. I would like to thank all of our guests, including Mrs. Kathy Blows and Carrie Miles, as well as Mr. Steele, for being on the program. I'd also like to thank our film crew. We have two. One is from Elderton High School, led by Dr. Bobby Hamill, and one from West Shamokin High School, led by Mr. Steele. Please join us again next week for another look at the Armstrong School District, and for more information, check out our website. Have a great week.
Hi, I'm Jacob George, and this is what's going on around the Armstrong School District. Kindergarten registration will be 1 month earlier than usual in February to help school administrators better plan for teaching staffing in the 2007-2008 school year. Here is the 2007 kindergarten registration schedule. Dayton Elementary on February 20th from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Elderton Elementary on February 21st from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Kittanning Township Elementary on February 20th from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Lenape Elementary on February 21st, 22nd, and 23rd from 9 a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m. and then from noon until 2:30 p.m. Shannock Valley Elementary on February 21st for last names A through J, and then February 22nd for last names K through Z. Both will be 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. West Hills Primary on February 20th, 21st, and 22nd from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Remember, admission to kindergarten is limited to children who will be 5 years old on or before August 31st, 2007. Parents and guardians are asked to bring the following information to registration: an original copy of the children's birth certificate, the child's immunization records, proof of residency with accurate descriptions of their home's location, municipality, road names, and landmarks for the purpose of planning transportation routes. If you have any questions, please call the office at the building where your child will be registered. I'm Jacob George from Kittanning High School. Keep watching.